Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. As part of my membership option, I'm going to be providing some additional videos beyond what I provide on my regular YouTube channel. Now today, since I'm just starting my channel membership, I'm going to be giving you an example of these additional videos that I would be providing to members only. In this case, it's an additional shootout to the vinyl shootout I did the other day of Steely Dan's The Royal Scam. I didn't have in my possession at the time that I received the Analogue Productions yet the version that was done by Universal, which is what they call the $30 version, and it's the one where Bernie Grundman sends the high res of the actual master tape as it is just right off of the tape, sends that to a mastering engineer to do the cut for the Universal 33 RPM release. And so this high-res digital file went to Sterling in Nashville, and Joe Nino Hernes was given the task of putting this to vinyl, taking that high-res file, then mastering and getting it to a lacquer to be mass-produced. Now, we don't have an indication of where the record was actually pressed at. In the past, they were either done by GZ Media overseas or at Precision in Canada, which is a division of GZ Media. Be that as it may, this record comes out and is available to all retailers at a $30 figure running at 33 RPM. So how does this one stack up? Now, I've done previous comparisons when these have been released and found generally that they in fact were very decent in the sense that you got a nice clean copy of this record, which isn't always as easy to find when you're looking for originals of these Steely Dan records. However, this one has similar characteristics to the old ones which were done before, and that is that they tend to push the limits. They are louder. They tend to sound more compressed, they are a bit brighter, and they are really in your face. And the OG, the promo that I did, it had some of those characteristics, of course, as I brought up on the high end, but this really even went a step further by being about a decibel or so louder than the original. And put all that together, and the presentation of these is very much kind of an in-your-face kind of presentation of sound. Now, you know, if you have a really low wattage system that can't crank a lot, you're probably going to get more out of this than you would in AP, because the AP really shines when you can turn it up. And then you can hear the detail and the nuance. Even though, admittedly, it does seem that on the AP there was some attempts to tame a few things down, as I said in my previous video. And that is even a bit more evident with this comparison, because this universal release from the digital master really comes at you hot and heavy. And if that sound is okay for you, and if you're not really concerned as much about the details and nuance, definitely this is a reasonable value to pick up for this LP. The vinyl was actually kind of dirty in a way that the sound was popping and ticking here and there, and I cleaned it after listening to it once, and it did resolve some of those issues. And there is a bit more surface noise, of course, than on the Analogue Productions, and about the same, maybe a tad better than the original. Again, this is a $30 record, so we have to put all things in perspective when it comes to that. So looking at the ratings, you're going to see where it falls relative to the others that I have already reviewed. The nature of audio comparisons is that the results presented in this video are fully subjective. They are based on my equipment in my listening room using my hearing capability. Therefore, your results may be different. My effort here is to provide you the relative difference of audio characteristics across various pressings. So for the rankings and ratings here, I'm going to be focusing exclusively pretty much on this new US reissue from Geffen Universal, the 33 RPM, mastered from high-res digital file by Joe Nino Hernes at Sterling, Nashville. Again, not sure where the pressing was done. Don't see any particular indicator for that. But when you look at the record here, you notice here that right out of the box, the relative decibels, it's about a decibel louder than the original. And so when you compare that then with the Analogue Productions reissue, that's a minus 1 dB, it's basically 2 dB louder. So immediately you run into this situation where had to do some volume matching and increase the volume on the AP to get the two at parity. That allows the AP to bring out more distinctions and nuance in what it has. And as I talked about in my primary video on this, it seems that they had tried to tamp down or tame a bit the original on this. The quietness of the vinyl I mentioned, it wasn't bad. It was better after a cleaning. I'll give it an 8.5. A tad better than the OG, about what the UK was. But when we come into these Sonics numbers, and I thought long and hard about how to do this, but at the end of the day, everything was pushed a bit. Everything was, like I said, the term in your face. It really did sit in your lap hard and heavy. And because of that, you missed some things. Some things were merged together, and it was harder to distinguish various sounds, and even in the voices somewhat, you would get when there were harmonies, it kind of one laying too much heavily on top of the other. So I gave the bass and the mids a 1/4 point over the top and a 1/2 point over the top on the treble. Honestly, I could have gone even maybe 3/4 on that one. It's even a little heavier than the OG. But those are where they are. Now, again, if you like that kind of presentation, you really want it that way, it's going to satisfy you greatly. And the illusion becomes a lot of times when these are that way, and they even have some levels of compression, which we'll talk about in the dynamic range, you can get fooled a bit auditorily by that. When you have something like this then to compare to the Analogue Productions, you get a sense of the difference and the ability to extrapolate more nuance out of the AP when you're able to do that and have the two A being right next to each other. But in and of itself, you know, this is kind of like it's coming at you, it's hot, and it's there for you. And if you like that sound, this $30 digital high-res file to vinyl reissue is really going to be in your sweet spot, in your wheelhouse. Dynamic range was an 8, and it was squished some, and it showed even more greatly when you compared it to the Analogue Productions, because before volume matching them, and the Analogue Productions was lesser volume, it still was dynamically showing a wider berth and ability to make the meters bump higher. And of course, when they got level matched, it was even greater. So there's some level of whether the digitizing in and of itself or some other attempt in the mastering process. So I gave it a lesser dynamic range. It was more on par with that UK. Soundstage and imaging was about an 8. Again, a little bit blurry there because of the intensity of some of it, as were the voices. Because when we get to that, some of them really just sat on top of each other, laid on top of each other. Whereas on the AP, you could start to distinguish those voices more and hear them in a broader berth of a soundstage. So the way the math ends up working on this, because every rating over 10, that overage gets deducted from the average of the rest of the numbers. So a 1/4 point and a 1/4 point and a 1/2 point. So a full point got knocked off of the Sonics average and the Vinyl plus Sonics average on this. So it took a hit to get down to a 7. So it ranked below the UK. But I've got to say, I can't say that it was less pleasing. It was just a little more irritating on the top end. The problem with the UK was it really just had the bottom end jacked, whereas this one kind of jacked it all the way across. So it had a little bit more synergy, I guess I would say, in that regard. And the vinyl cleanliness had only brought it up a hair at 7.13, but dollar for dollar, $4.29 for a $30 record on the rankings. So, I mean, you can't beat that. And again, it's a new record. But again, it depends on the kind of system you have, and it depends on the way you like this kind of sound. But it's a bit aggressive, and it has that spark, it has that life, and it really does come at you a bit. Whereas the mannerism of the AP is much more controlled and much more easy listening kind of thing. So I'd say that I'll put it this way. The Geffen Universal Digital one, if you're not in the room and whatever, just listening for listening's sake, it's fine. But if you're doing any critical listening, that's where I think the AP comes into shining quite a bit. And so it's all a matter of what you're in it for and what you're expecting. So there you have it. That's how I see the $30 reissue of the Royal Scam by Steely Dan. Again, it is a matter of how you like your sound. Maybe it's a matter of your system and its ability to really deliver for those more nuanced sounds at higher volumes that you're going to pick up in the Analogue Productions to appreciate. Whereas this one just comes right off of the stylus, hot and heavy and ready to go. Almost as if they made it for AM radio. So there you have it. Again, this is a video that normally I will be putting on my membership if it's an additional one to my regular shootout. But this one I've released generally to give you an idea of what membership can give you. Again, all you have to do is go to the main page on YouTube of Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion, and next to the subscribe area, you're going to see a join opportunity. If you really find this interesting, as well as a lot of digital things that I'm going to be adding into my comparisons as well, you might consider the $4.99 USD a month to get this material, along with the daily audio diet, which I started today. So as always, thanks for joining me. If you aren't a subscriber, please consider doing so by clicking on the bell below. A thumbs up or a like is appreciated for this video. Comments are always welcome as well. So until we catch you next time, thanks for joining me. Take care, everybody.